My name's Tom Powers. I'm the documentary programmer of the festival, my 17th year here. And, well, thank you. For 2 years, it's been a very different experience, and we feel really pleased to be back with 200 films this year. The festival street is open. But the most important thing to have back this year is you, a full audience. So thank you for being here. Some other thank yous I need to give and I want to give to our lead and major sponsors, Bell, RBC, Bulgari, and Visa for their continued support. I want to thank our major supporters, the Government of Canada, the Government of Ontario, Telefilm Canada, and the City of Toronto for their continued support. This film plays as part of the Tiff Docs program, which is generously sponsored by A&E Indie Films. This film is eligible for the People's Choice Award and the People's Choice Documentary Award. You can vote for your favorite films at tiff.net/vote. And I want to thank Apple Original Films for providing us with this film. Each year, we pick a film to be the opening night of the Tiff Doc section. And the choice was very clear to us this year to select LOUIS Armstrong's Black and Blues for that position. It's a film that, of course, is about a great artist and is made with an artistry that does justice to the person at the center of the film. After the film, we're going to be joined by a very special group of people, including the director, Sacha Jenkins, also the composer, Terence Blanchard, producer, Julie Anderson, and Jackie Harris, the executive director of the LOUIS Armstrong Educational Foundation. For a long time, it was a kind of absence in the documentary canon that no one had stepped up and made a great documentary about LOUIS Armstrong. And I think that this film was waiting for the director that it deserved, and it got that director in Sacha Jenkins. His career as a music journalist extends to working for Vibe and Rolling Stone and his company Mass Appeal. He's made documentaries about hip-hop and funk. His depth of music education, which extends to being a musician himself, is hard to compare. We are really pleased to have with us for his first time at the Toronto Film Festival. Please welcome Sacha Jenkins.
Hi. I like Canada. Very nice people. So far, I've been here a couple hours, and people have been nice to me. I want to thank this gentleman. Round of applause for this gentleman. Who really advocated for the film. This is such an amazing opportunity for us. I want to thank Apple Original Films. I want to thank Imagine. As a filmmaker, you want to feel protected and supported, and wow, what a team they've been in supporting. There's an old black woman somewhere in America right now who's saying it takes a village to make something really good, and I'm an old black man in Canada who's going to tell you the same thing. And we had an amazing team of archival editors. I myself am a second generation director, filmmaker, and one of my favorite people and editors, Mr. Jason Pollard, is also a second-generation filmmaker. Round of applause for him. And next to him is a young person who is from this T-Dot, right? That's what you guys call it. Who worked on the film, Simone Maurice. Round of applause. And you're going to meet some other folks who worked on the film and really fought for it. We have an amazing score, soundtrack of Mr. Terence Blanchard, blessed us. We also have a friend of mine, is a rapper, his name is Nas. Are you familiar with him? Yeah. And he pulled me aside and said that Wonderful World was his favorite song. And I knew that I wanted his voice for this film because we pretty much grew up together in the same neighborhood, have many friends in common, although we grew up about a mile apart. I see so much in the guys that we grew up with in Louis Armstrong and the people that he came up with. And when you think about who he was, when he was who he was, and who he became, he had to be who he was to become who he became. Because if he didn't, no one else would have done it. And the guy was a fine artist, an amazing writer, a pioneering musician, and he was just straight up funny. And I can't tell you how many people I grew up with who fit all those descriptions but didn't make it. Years and years after Louis Armstrong did what he did. So going into this project, I didn't know as much as I do now, but you know, my dream has always been to do the definitive Jimi Hendrix documentary, and I don't know if that's ever going to happen, but when I realized that I did Louis Armstrong, I mean, there would be no Hendrix, there would be no Beatles, there'd be so much that didn't happen if it wasn't for Louis Armstrong. So I'm really thankful for the opportunity to tell this story. And I think that you'll all walk away from this feeling like his presence is powerful. And I'll tell you, we shot at his home, which is also a museum, and so many folks who work around maintaining his legacy and educating people about Louis Armstrong. These people are dedicated, a very important part of this film. You know, we're in Louis Armstrong's home, and you'll learn that he's really into laxatives. And I had the opportunity to use his bathroom. And I said to myself, you know, he would have appreciated this. But, you know, I feel like, you know, Basquiat is someone I admire, and I think he's great. I think this should be Louis Armstrong's Basquiat moment. There would be no Basquiat. I mean, he was a huge fan of jazz. All the stuff that this guy did, he's just not a normal person. And we're shooting in the house, and you know, this is an interesting story. And there's a turntable that was his actual turntable that he listened to music. He had these reel-to-reel tapes that we got to work somehow, but for whatever reason, we couldn't get we couldn't even find the plug for the turntable. So we're like, all right, F it, we're just gonna manually spin the record and shoot it as if it's playing. And do you know, it just started working? I'm not making this up. You know, we spent a week or so at the house, and afterwards I felt not going back, I felt lost, I felt something was missing. So, credit due to Mr. Louis Armstrong, and I hope you really enjoy the film, and I guess we'll talk afterwards. Thank you.
All right, it's my pleasure to bring out some of the team behind this film. I'm going to start with Jackie Harris from the Louis Armstrong Educational Foundation. The composer of the film, Terence Blanchard. The producer, Julie Anderson. And director, Sacha Jenkins. Jackie, I want to start with you from the Louis Armstrong Foundation. What was it that made you say yes to this project after so many years of there not being a Louis Armstrong film?
Well, you know, you would be surprised at the number of people who contact the foundation looking to do documentaries, film, or using his music. But we've been very protective of his legacy. And when Justin and Ron contacted us and they were interested in doing something, and after having talked with them and also visiting the archives, we knew that these were the people to do this. And we're very happy and proud, and we really like what they did. It's the epitome of who Louis Armstrong is. It makes me almost want to cry because it's really wonderful.
Terence, you're a trumpet player from New Orleans, like Jackie's from New Orleans. What does watching this film mean to you?
Kind of like Jackie, my emotions are all over the place, you know. There's so many things. I was telling Sacha backstage, when I hear Louis's voice, it's like a warm blanket being from New Orleans. It reminds me of my father. It brings me back to that whole generation. And it makes me understand his sacrifice, which allows me to be who I am right now. You know, I didn't get it, you know, when I was younger, you know, but to see what he endured, because he could have given up or he could have succumbed to, you know, hate, you know, but he didn't. He pushed forward and he allowed the music to speak for itself. And watching this, I'm just overjoyed at the fact that it's been done. And I have to thank Sacha again for putting together something brilliant, because this is not just for us. This is for our kids, our grandkids, great-grandkids. I love the fact that people will be able to click on something and see this man's entire personality and his life and really understand his journey. And hopefully it'll allow us to be able to communicate instead of fight. It'll allow us to be able to resolve issues through being able to talk and even have disagreements, right? But still be personable, still be respectful. So I'm, you know, like I said, my emotions are all over the place. I just love being a part of it.
Julie, as a film's producer, I want to ask you, what did you see on screen and what Sacha did in this film that maybe an audience wouldn't understand about the work that went into this film?
Oh boy. Well, I think that one person who deserves a lot of attention who is Amilca Palmer, who's sitting back there somewhere, who's the archival producer who pulled everything together. Did an amazing job. I think it's hard to appreciate how much work a film that has this volume of archival material and music and licensing and all that stuff that producers have to worry about, what an enormous task it is. But it is such a privilege to have been able to work on this film, and I learned so much and have met some really wonderful people working on the film. And Louis is somebody that everybody should know and understand, because I think that he's really known as a brilliant musician, and he was really a brilliant ambassador as well to people. He brought people together. He made people think about what's really important in life, and he will never be forgotten for those reasons. You can see how all these old musicians really honored him, and we're so grateful to have played with him, which is most of the archival material that's in the film about from the oral history of the musicians. All of those guys had played with him.
Sacha, I want to ask you what drew you to this project, and then what it meant for you to take on the immensity of this career.
Well, the wonderful people at this working. The wonderful people at Imagine reached out to me about the opportunity, and again, going into it, I didn't know much about Louis Armstrong at all. I kind of had my own feelings growing up in hip hop and Public Enemy, and you know, having these feelings about the way he carried himself. And when I learned more and more about him, you know, you've got to place yourself where people are in their lives and where they come from, what they experience, and what he experienced is much different.
Sacha, I'll just ask you to hold the microphone a little closer to your mouth.
It's not working.
No,
It is?
Yeah.
You can hear me? Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
All right, something's up with the mic. What was I saying?
You were saying that you'd come out of hip hop, and you were describing what Louis Armstrong meant.
Yeah,
or didn't mean.
I was ignorant, like many of us. I was ignorant. I had my own perceptions based on what we're supposed to think, based on being pro-black or, you know, being a young black man trying to find your way in America. And when you unpack who he really was, I mean, you got to be someone really special to deal with all of that and maneuver. It's almost like jujitsu, you know. It's like cultural, spiritual, emotional jujitsu that you've got to navigate. And again, if he didn't do that, where would we be? You know, where would we be? And you think about a guy like Ed Sullivan, which I have a project with Ed Sullivan, but like, what if Ed Sullivan didn't put black people on TV in the way that he did? He understood the value of what it is that we do and what we make. You know, he understood that. And Louis Armstrong understood a lot. Like, you know, he's on TV, and I'm not Mr. N-word. I'm not a big fan of the N-word, right? But I'm not the N-word police at the same time. But when he's on TV saying that someone, you know, like a pimp back home or a player, you know, gave him this advice and said, when you go up north, you got to make sure that you've got a white man who says, you know, you're my N-word, right? Now, you don't see to his left is Tony Randall from, you know, Odd Couple, and he's wincing, right? But, like, he understands exactly what he's saying, right? And he understands that it's not elegant, right? But was he wrong? That's the thing. It's like, this guy's brilliant. Like, he's doing these things that he knows or might rub people the wrong way, but he knows what he's doing at all times. So when I learned all these things, I'm like, wow, this guy is the man. Like, who's cooler than, like, literally, when the film opens up and he's wearing like a cheetah jacket, you know, this cheetah thing, and he actually has a six-pack. He's not Lil Louis, he's like six-pack Louis, and he's just blowing. He's cool. Who's cooler than that? He's the man, you know? So it's like, I didn't know. A lot of people my generation did not know. So it's really amazing to have the opportunity to tell the story.
I want to get a couple questions from the audience. If you have a question, raise your hand, and I'll try to repeat it. Don't be shy. Here we go.
Hi. I just wonder how long it took to make that film.
The question was, how long did it take to make this film?
Like 2 years? Something like 2 years. But, you know, believe it or not, people are still working on it. Your friend from T-Dot, there she is, she's nodding her head. It ain't over for her and others, so it's still going.
All right, who's got another question? Way up in the back.
The discovery of the knowledge of the tapes come first, or did you begin the project and then they said, hey, we got the tapes?
So he's asking about the audio tapes, and you know, at what stage did you understand that those tapes existed?
I mean, the tapes were a selling point, you know, the opportunity to have Mr. Armstrong speak in his own words, candidly. I mean, what could be more entertaining or interesting than that? The guy who supposedly had no opinions and no views on what was going on, and then you learn that when he finally does say something, then, you know, even his own people, which is always interesting, go against him. They say, what do you know about this? Well, you know, why are you speaking out? You know, it's too late. So, you know, sort of understanding his feelings about damned if you do and damned if you don't, and, you know, his reasoning for, like, not wanting to march. I mean, he's an older man, and he's saying, like, look, if I get hit in the mouth, it's a wrap for me. Like, once again, is he wrong? You know, and so you got to look at where people are in their lives. And now I think we've created something where people can really look at this guy as a whole person and understand why he was who he was, when he was.
Jackie, I wonder if you can elaborate on those tapes from the standpoint of the Louis Armstrong Foundation. I mean, I had read about those tapes and written biographies, but I never heard them before. You know, exactly what use had been made of them before, and why would you lay this film music?
Well, let me say this. Louis Armstrong curated his own story. There are tapes, and Sacha knows there are tapes that where he was recorded in his home just talking to his wife. He would record himself talking with friends in the dressing room. And not only tapes, as you saw, the way the messages were shown on film were collages. He has boxes and boxes of collages, and the tapes are important, but I think that aside from the tapes, when you went to the house, you saw how he and Lucille lived. Schools, researchers come all the time to the house to do research on Mr. Armstrong. He collected such a volume of work, and Lucille and Phoebe Jacobs and those who were close to him. Any question that you might have about this man, you can go to the archives and have that question answered. And that's very rare in this case. Phoebe Jacobs, who was the executive vice president of the Armstrong Foundation and who traveled with Lucille and with Pops, Lucille told her when he came off stage, his suit was soaked, but don't throw anything away. Whether it's a matchbox, a napkin, a handkerchief, a piece of paper that somebody may have given him, don't throw it away, and they kept everything. If you ever have the opportunity to visit the house, I invite you to do that, or go to the archives, and everything this man ever did is there for us to see.
Terence, as I wrap this up, I want to ask final question to you. You get this request. We're making a film about Louis Armstrong. We'd like you to do some music for it. That doesn't seem like something a musician would take lightly.
Well, the first thing is you have to realize that you're not going to play on it. That's the first thing. There's no way in hell that I was going to play my trumpet on the same documentary with Louis Armstrong. So the first thing I thought of was, and the great thing about this documentary, there's so much of his own music in it, right, which is really beautiful to hear and experience. So I thought the score should go counter to that. That's the reason why I brought in a string quartet with the jazz ensemble. And I was telling Sacha in the back, the theme is based off of this whole rocking chair, And the reason why I picked that particular tune, there's just something about the vibe of that, even though there's so much music of Pops that I really love, just the notion of him and Jack T. Gordon singing that song, Traveling the South, kind of represented to me who Pops was his entire life. He's a person that took everybody at face value. What you brought to him is what he gave to you. If you respected him, he gave the respect back. There's that one moment where he says, "That's not me. I don't care about that. If you're a dumb son of a bitch, then that's on you." You know what I mean? And I thought it was important, to kind of constantly show that part of him, because we all know the great recordings. We all know all the trumpet players in the room, if there are any. We all know that introduction to West End Blues, But hearing that other side of him, the personal side of him, the human side of him, the person with all of the struggles in the midst of being this huge public figure, was the thing that I tried to convey in the score.
You're the first audience to see Louis Armstrong's Black and Blues. It'll be coming out later this fall from Apple Original Films. I hope that you spread the word. It's the first day of the festival. I hope you come back and see more films. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being here. Thanks especially to Jackie Moore.